Today we are honored to welcome Jim Marshall to the show. How you doing, man?
Hi, Anthony. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I know you're super invested in learning, and it's pretty impressive everything that you've accumulated to be of service. And I'm really curious myself, what's the story that got you into this? Is there some type of hero's journey? Like, what's the spark that got you into this space in the first place?
When you say this space, what exactly are you referring to?
I am
You
referring
mean
to,
Septemics?
yeah, exactly. Like how did you get started in that?
Okay. Well, first, I should say so there's a context for your viewers. I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I created a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics, and published into the book Septemics Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. Now, I should tell you what Septemics is because I'm sure they're saying, what the hell is that? So, Septemics is a philosophical science based on the fact that many phenomena related to humans occur in a sequence of 7 levels. Literally, the word septemics means of or pertaining to 7. And septemics comprised a collection of scales or sequences, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. There are 35 such scales, each of which is unique. And between them, they span the spectrum of human experience, by which I mean any problem, dilemma, situation, difficulty that any person has that's related to people can successfully be analyzed by one or more of these scales, usually more than one. So that's what this is about. So now I'll answer your question as to where this came from and how I got started in this. The story really starts when I was accepted into engineering school at the age of 16. Now, of course, at the time, I thought I was going to be engineering physical things, such as airfoils and motors and gears and electrons and such, like all the other engineering students thought. But by the time I had my bachelor's degree, it was clear that I wanted to engineer the human psyche, because it's the area of greatest unknown, of greatest mystery, and more importantly, it is the area in which we as a race are failing miserably. 95% of the problems in industrialized society are because people don't understand people. Don't understand the husband, don't understand the son, don't understand the wife, don't understand the mother, whatever. This is huge. And Septemics solves that problem across 35 axes, which makes it very easy to use. So, to make a long story short, I had a long career as a human development engineer, working one-on-one with hundreds of clients of every description. All of my clients improved as a result of our work together. So I was using engineering principles, engineering tactics, engineering strategies, engineering devices, engineering theories, et cetera, to bring people to enlightenment, greater responsibility, personal satisfaction, self-realization, whatever the person wanted. While this was going on, I started to notice incidentally that I could predict the outcome of the session. I never told this to anyone, but I made notes. And as the decades rolled by, it became obvious to me that the client would be at a specific level on a specific scale that I had previously observed and recorded. And as a result of our interaction, he would go up to the next level on that scale. Now, this happened many thousands of times over a 40-year period. Every time it happened, it verified my hypothesis, because the clients knew absolutely nothing about what I was doing, how I was doing it, what theories I was using, what I was recording, or anything else. All they knew was they came to me with a problem or an unwanted condition or whatever, and I helped them with it, and it was relieved. So this is very strong data because there cannot be a placebo effect and there cannot be any power of suggestion because the people had no idea what I was looking at or recording.
Right.
But then you have to realize I would see this in the session, and then I would go out in the real world to the bank or the supermarket, and I would see exactly the same phenomenon. And people I didn't even know, people I wasn't even talking to. I would just look at them and they would be manifesting the same thing, which only verified it. And again, that's very strong scientific information. They didn't even know I was looking at them. So, by 1995, I had accrued about 32 scales. This is all based on direct empirical observation. There is no theory of septemics. I just saw what was in front of my face and wrote it down. Also, around that same time, by then I had one scale in particular that was a 6-level scale that by then I knew was correct because I had been using it for decades. So I was pondering a difficult client and trying to assess her against that scale and getting nowhere. And then I realized, this scale has a 7th level. She is at a level on that scale that I had not previously observed. I didn't know about it. So as soon as I saw that, I knew immediately where to insert it into the 6-level scale, thus making it a 7-level scale. At that moment, it manifested mathematically. And let me tell you what I mean by that. I took 28 semesters of math and loved every minute of it. I think in math. When it appears, I recognize it. So, when I inserted that 7th level, that scale went from being a line, which is what a scale is, to a plane, meaning a whole body of data. So all this data jumped out at me without my asking for it or looking for it. That is a mathematical manifestation, because what goes on in math is you start with a formula or an equation, and using the laws of mathematics, you coax data out of it until you get something at the end that's useful to you. That is how Einstein found E equals mc squared, by that exact process. So he got down there and he found this, wait a minute, this is big. E equals mc squared. I'm not going to go into the explanation, but he could see this is revolutionary. It changed the whole world of physics. So that's sort of what was happening here with me. Now, when I saw this mathematical manifestation, suddenly this scale now had all of these intersecting, interacting, interlocking mathematical data that fit together like a Chinese puzzle. And when I saw that, I said, whoa, I don't know what this is, but whatever it is, it has to be natural law, because anything that has mathematics embedded in it is natural law. Like, for example, the Fibonacci sequence. So then I thought, I wonder how many of these other scales that I have are 7-level scales that had not been developed all the way, because you have to realize I wasn't developing anything. I was just helping my clients and making notes. But then, knowing what I was looking for, I inspected all these other scales. And in a short period of time, each of them went to 7 levels and manifested mathematically. So now I had 32 7-level scales, all of which had mathematics embedded in them that were all about human phenomena. And having gone to school for 28 years, I never saw anything like this. I said, this looks like I discovered a new subject. And it's one that could really help people. So then I thought, I could go from helping people by the hundreds, which is what I had been doing as human development engineer, to helping them by the millions if we put this in a book and get it out so people can have it and use it. So I'm going to have to write a book.
Makes sense.
So the first draft was finished in December of 95. And I immediately sent it out in a transcript form to colleagues of mine, each of whom had graduate degrees in a variety of subjects. And they all responded very positively. They had different responses, but distinctly positive responses. And that told me this is exactly what I thought it was, which is a new subject that people would get. This is not obscure. People get this. People open up the book at first blush, never knowing anything about it, and look at a scale and say, this makes sense. I get this. Now, several people have said to me, what book is your book like? And in all candor, I have to tell them, I don't think there's ever been a book like this before, at least on Earth. But each one of these 35 scales is expressed in what you could call a table or a spreadsheet. And that table is very similar to the periodic table of elements. Now, you probably can recall when you first found the periodic table of elements, you were maybe 12 or 13 or 14, right?
Yeah,
School,
somewhere
right?
around there.
So you looked at it, and it didn't take long to see that this made sense, right? Well, hydrogen is 1, helium is 2, lithium is 3, and it just keeps going like that, horizontally and vertically. So the more you study it, the more sense it makes. So when Mendeleev first created it, there are only 79 elements. Now we have about 50 more. And we just keep fitting it in, because it works. You know why it works? It's natural law. So, every one of these tables is a periodic table for the corresponding subject. So, this is taking scientific rigor and an engineering approach and using it to explain human phenomena. So the next thing I should do is explain to you the names of these 35 scales, because then you'll know exactly what subject matter is addressed in the book. And that'll tell you a lot about this.
Sounds good.
Of the 35 scales, 24 of them I call individual scales, and 11 I call group scales. These are the individual scales: the scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction. And these are the group scales: the scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. Any one of these scales by itself could dramatically improve the life of the reader. And I'll give you a simple example of how that would work. I mentioned the scale of motivation. One of the most important things to know about anybody is motivation. Why is this person doing this? We go through this all the time, right? Some guy is talking to some girl, and she's thinking, why is this guy talking to me? Does he want a date? Does he want money? You know, is he lonely? What? Why? See, that's motivation. So we all do this.
Exactly.
Well, I have reduced this to the 7 basic human motivations. Now you might say, well, there are thousands of motivations. Yes, but they're just subsets of these.
That makes sense.
And I did the heavy lifting by getting every one of these human phenomena down to exactly 7 levels. So it's easy to use because it's not a large menu. You're always selecting from a menu of 7. So that's what this is about. Now, after I told you I sent it to colleagues and I had a very positive response, I then spent the next 25 years working on this book. And that's because, first, I had to discover the phenomena. And I've pretty much already told you how that occurred. Although I did find 3 more skills while I was writing the book, which is
Really?
writing 35 now. And then I had to take this data and use it to craft a workable philosophic system. Now, as an engineer, like all other engineers, I'm only interested in facts and results. That is the world of engineering. To a scientist, the final product, if he's a success, is a theory, like the theory of evolution or the theory of relativity. To an engineer, the final product is a thing that works. Right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
In the world of engineering, you are never allowed to say, oops. You can't just have the plane fall out of the sky and say, oops, I didn't get that one right.
No big deal.
So that's why engineering is full of all these corrective measures, preventative measures, factors of error, et cetera, to always make sure this is going to work. So I had to make something that would work all the time for every person. That took 20 years. Then, the most time-consuming aspect of this was expressing it in a way that would make sense to the average person. Because understanding something sophisticated like this and explaining it to somebody are 2 different things. Now, I know I succeeded at expressing this well because some version of this book has existed now for almost 30 years. And I have been watching people respond to this all that time. They get it. So that's where this came from.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's so much information you put in there. Some follow-up questions to that is there any philosophical system that kind of influenced you while we were developing this?
Well, the truth is, many philosophical systems influenced me. I'm a polymathic intellectual. So I'm an expert in a couple of dozen subjects.
Okay.
Now, of course, when I was studying these things, I was studying them individually. I was studying chemistry, it was chemistry. When I was studying physics, it was physics. When I was studying law, it was law. But eventually, over a long period of time, the whole thing coalesced in my mind into one big thing. And that's how I see the world. And I have said many times, only a polymath could have discovered this subject, because it's so vast that a person who specializes would not have been able to see it for what it was, even if he did observe the phenomena. Many people have observed some of these phenomena before, but they did not develop it, and they did not see it for what it was. So I could tell you all the subjects, that I know, and that would kind of answer your question, but it's not a thing, it's many things.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, did you have another question?
Yeah. So it seems to me like a lot of your things were based on observation, which I believe is the most important form of learning. Like, because it's a real world experience, right? You're looking at your clients, and you're making notes, you're evaluating. I think that's the best way to develop something, because you're actually getting real world feedback, instead of just like, you can read things all day, but when you're putting it into experience, I think that's super valuable.
Right. Yeah, I
So,
just saw it was there. Many people have sort of noticed that I'm what you might call an unusual person. And I think the main difference between me and most people is my perception is better. Because I've been in many situations where I'll see some phenomena or a set of facts, and I will infer something from it, and the other people don't get that at all. How did you get that? So, I observe things carefully, and I record them carefully. So that's how this came about.
that makes sense. So, how can people use this system in their own lives as a form of personal development and just, like how to analyze their own lives and make improvements?
Right. So let me tell you in a general way how this is beneficial without going into specifics or details. I wrote this book to help people. I've had a lifetime of helping people. Each of these 35 scales provides the reader with an infallible way of determining the salutariness or the beneficialness of any group, individual, or activity. If the group, individual, or activity moves the person up the scale, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves them down, it's detrimental or negative. So I'm giving you a yardstick by which to measure human phenomena, which is an entirely new thing. Secondly, more importantly, once you spot either yourself or another person on any scale, which is essentially what this is about, you have an insight. 100% of the time, you have an insight. So let's say you're having trouble with your girlfriend, right? So you look at, let's say, the scale of control. Everybody has issues about control. And you spot her, right? So you spot her at level, she's at level 4. That explains why she does X, Y, Z, and A, B, C. So you have a realization right then. Every time you spot someone on a level, you have an insight. So you just got smarter. Your relationship with that person, even if it's yourself, just got better because you understand it. Right? So let's say you have a mother-in-law that drives you crazy. She's always telling you and the wife what to do. Do this, do that. So you look at the scale of control, right? And you say, she's at level 6. Level 6 is what is popularly referred to as a control freak. Now you understand why she does this. So you may not be able to get her to change that in any way, but you understand it. So when she hits you with it, it's not mysterious, it's expected. You know what's going on, and therefore you don't worry about it, you don't get upset about it. It's like a mosquito, You get a mosquito in your house, he bites you. That's what mosquitoes do, It's no big thing, you swat it, you get rid of it. So you can't get rid of all the mosquitoes, but you understand mosquitoes, right? If they get in your house, they're going to bite you. Or if you go out in a certain type of an area, right? So people are the same way. Now, once you know the correct level on any scale for any person, you can improve that person by moving him up one level. This is very significant. I have solved the gradient problem that has bedeviled mankind for 6,000 years. And let me tell you what I mean by that. People have problems, difficulties, dilemmas, situations, they don't know how to fix them, right? More than 99% of the time it's because they don't know the gradient. You have to know the right gradient. So every good coach, therapist, facilitator, teacher in the world understands that human development must be done on a gradient, right? So let's say you have a good algebra teacher. First day he says, This is a variable. A variable is a number, and we don't know what its value is. We're going to call it X, but we could call it something else. Oh, okay. You have to explain that first. Then you can say, this is an equation. It's numbers, and they have the same value on both sides. See? That's gradients. Now that goes on for 2 semesters, and at the end of 2 semesters, you know algebra. So that's what I did with my clients for 40 years. I picked the person up at the level he was at and moved him to the next level.
That's how it's done.
Right.
That's how your results for sure.
And if you just look at society in general, you see that most people do not understand this. So, for example, I've worked as a physical trainer. A guy comes to me and says, Jim, I'm 100 pounds overweight. I can't fix this. Will you help me? Sure, I'll train you. So the first thing I do is, I'm not going to just tell this guy, here's a 100-pound barbell, go lift that or go run 5 miles. That's malpractice. I have to find out the gradients for this guy, right? So I say, okay, I look at him, I talk to him. I say, okay, I'm going to make a guess. I think you can curl 15 pounds. Here's 15 pounds. Let's see you curl it, right? So he's curling. Now I say, okay, how many of these can you do? He says, this is easy. I can do this all day. Fine, stop. Let's try 20. Now we get him to, now I say, how's that going? Well, this is harder. You know, I can do maybe 13. Stop. I want you to do 13 reps on each arm 3 times every day. And at the end of the week, we'll talk again. So at the end of the week, I see him again and say, how are you doing? If he says, this has gotten quite easy, I say, okay, let's go to 15 reps. If he says, this is tough, I'm sore, I say, all right, just keep going the way you're going. See? Finding the gradient. So that is how you help people. You have to know. Now, these scales are the gradients for human phenomena. Now, if you look at this list that I read, people keep telling me, I covered everything. Which is why I know every person is at some level on every scale. The question is not whether or not the person is on that scale. The question is what level is he at? And when you spot that, you'll have a realization. And then you understand it better. So you're a little bit smarter. Now, then, the next time you use it, you'll have another realization. But you bring the first realization with you to the second application. And then you go to the third application and you bring the first 2 insights with you to the... So what's happening is, this is a virtuous cycle. The more you do this, the smarter you get. The smarter you get, the easier it is to do. The easier it is to do, the more you do it, and the more you do it, the smarter you get.
Makes sense.
So the sky is the limit. If you live 1,000 years, you will still be using this because you're going to meet new people, you're going to have new situations, and this is universally applicable. I mean, if Pontius Pilate had this book when Jesus was brought to him, he would have handled it in a different way. He would have been able to look at it and say, wait a minute, this guy hasn't done anything bad. I'm not going to crucify him. We gave him a whipping. That's it. Tough. Take a hike. See? Because you would have known who this person was. So, think about this. In the United States, more than 50% of the marriages end in divorce. Clearly, those people did not know what they were looking at. Or that wouldn't have happened. If they knew what they were looking at, either they wouldn't have gotten married, they would have said, pass, right? Or they would have lived happily ever after. And another similar manifestation, all over the world, people routinely elect morons and criminals to run their governments. Because they don't know what they're looking at. So how does a guy like Hitler come to power? Clearly, the people of Germany did not correctly assess him, did they? Right?
Exactly.
So this is a big deal. So let me explain an analogy so you can see how this works. I've been into gardening since I was a boy. So maybe you have a garden and you say, Jim, come over and see my garden. I say, okay. So I show up at Anthony's house and I go in there and I say, oh, he's got irises, petunias, hydrangeas, begonias, forget-me-nots, tulips, roses. The reason I can do that is I know a lot about flowers, right? So let's say you bring some 5-year-old boy into your yard, and he's going to see and smell exactly what I saw and smelled. But all he can say is, these are pretty and they smell nice. That's all he knows. He doesn't know a begonia from a petunia, right? Now, most adults are like that child about people. They don't know what they're looking at. So think about this, right? Guy goes to a bar to meet a girl, right? This happens 7 days a week, right? And he sees some girl, and he interacts with her, and he says, she's pretty and she smells nice. That's what the little kid said, right? He doesn't know anything else about her. Now, if he knew this material, he could talk to her, and he could say, oh, she's high on the scale of literacy. She's high on the scale of memory. She's high on the scale of thought. Yeah, this is somebody I want to go out with, see? Or he could say, she's low on this scale and low on this scale. Pass. Right? So this is very useful. This saves you a fantastic amount of time, money, energy, aggravation, because you know what you're dealing with, for better or for worse. So look, I'll tell you a true story. I guess about 8-9 months ago, I'm a single guy. I met this gorgeous blonde. She looked like a movie star. So we were very interested in one another, right from the beginning. And so we're going through the usual getting to know you stuff. What kind of movies do you like? What kind of books do you read? What's your favorite TV show? Blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of that stuff, right? Early in a relationship.
Yep.
So we had at least a half a dozen conversations like that. So we're having this conversation, and I notice, she's low on this scale. Okay. So we had another conversation, and I noticed, she's low on this other scale. And then we had another conversation, and I said, she's low on this other scale. Wait a minute. This is a downscale person. Do I want to get involved with this? Yes, she's beautiful and congenial and pretty and glamorous and all that stuff. But I know because she's at or near the bottom of a bunch of scales, she's going to be at or near the bottom of even more scales than I observed. So this is going to be a train wreck. Now, we didn't have any difficulty. We didn't have an argument. Everything went fine. And the next time I spoke to her, I said, pass. Not interested. She was shocked. You know why? She was so gorgeous. I'm probably the first guy that ever did that to her. Most guys would have jumped right in and regretted it 3 months later.
That makes sense.
So she was so shocked when I said pass, because we hadn't had any bad interaction at all. She said, who do you think you are? And I did not say the perfect answer, which is, I'm the guy who knows Septemics. Because it wouldn't have meant anything to her. She didn't know anything about Septemics.
Right.
But that is how my life goes. Now look, when I was young, this material didn't exist. I hadn't discovered it yet, let alone codify it. It was unknown. So I made the same stupid mistakes that every other person makes. But now, knowing this material, for me, that does not happen, cannot happen, will not happen. So when I see an upscale person, I can spot that. When I see a downscale person, I can spot that, and it informs me. Also, you have to realize this is very specific. So let me give you an example of how this works, right? In a real world example that everybody can relate to. Let's say you're dating some girl for 3 years and you're talking about getting married. Big step, right? Wouldn't it make sense to ask yourself, why does this girl want to marry me? Isn't that a sensible question?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not saying to ask the girl, you don't know what you're going to get. Open the book. Look at the scale of motivation. You know her because you've been hanging around with her for 3 years, and the scale is very clear. So you read it, oh, I can see. She wants to marry me because she loves me. That's level 1, the highest of all. The highest purpose of all is motivated by love. But maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe what happens is you go through this and you say, now that I thought about this, I think she wants to marry me because I drive a Maserati, I have a 40-foot yacht, I fly my own Learjet, I live in a $10 million condo, and I have $15 million in the bank. That's a different motivation. That's money. This happens all the time.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not saying it's good or it's bad. I'm not judging anybody. I'm just saying it's a different motivation. Now, what you do with it is up to you. You might look at it and say, okay, she wants to marry me for my money. That's not the first time this has happened. But she's pretty, she's smart, she's clever, she's funny, she's easy to get along with, she's congenial, so I'm going to marry her anyway. And you might live happily ever after, knowing that she's motivated by money. So when she comes to you and says, honey, would you buy me a mink coat? You say, okay. You want to pick it out yourself, or you want me to do it? You know what's going on. But maybe that's not what happens. Maybe you're the type of person who says, I don't want to marry somebody who wants me to marry me for my money. I want to marry somebody who wants to marry me because they love me. And if that's the case, you might break up with her because you're looking for a wife. Now, don't think in that latter category that you would be upset about that. Oh, I'm so upset I broke up with my girl. That's not what would happen. You would be relieved. You would say, thank you, Jim, for showing me this. I dodged a bullet. And the next time you go out looking for a wife, you're a little smarter. And maybe you don't even mention your Maserati. So this is like a very user-friendly way of saving yourself a fantastic amount of wasted time and energy and money and heartache. Now, let's say you own an automobile dealership and you need a new salesman. So you start interviewing salesmen, right? Now remember, once you know these 7 levels, you sort of know what you're looking at. In other words, when you know what they are, it's easy to spot. Just like I know what a tulip looks like, I know what a chrysanthemum looks like, it's easy for me to spot. See? So this guy, it comes out in his verbiage that he's a money-motivated person. Hire him. That's what you want. You see? Same scale, same level, different application. You don't want to marry somebody who's money-motivated, but you want to hire somebody to work for you as a salesman who's money-motivated. See? This is very specific. So there are 35 skills. Each has 7 levels. There's 245 different levels. So there's a lot of information here. So the way you use it is you can assess yourself. You can just look at, the scale of basic purposes. Oh, what's my basic purpose? And when you spot it, you'll have a big epiphany. Ah, now I see why. And you'll have like 100 realizations. That's why I did this and this and this and this, and not that and that and that. Because this is my basic purpose. You'll throw out the other 6. They're not for you. This is your basic purpose. So now you understand yourself as you go through your life. So also, let's say you have a friend who's having trouble, right? You have a friend, Mark. Every time you talk to Mark, he complains about his wife. Every time. Right? And after 6 months, you get tired of listening to this. So you say, Mark, come here, let me show you something. Let me show you this. And you open the book to the scale of relationships. You say, look at this. He looks at it and he'll say something like, you mean there's a scale of relationships? You say, yeah. This relationship that you've been complaining to me about for 6 months, where is it on this scale? Guaranteed he's going to want to know that because he's having a lot of trouble and you're opening a door for him, see? So he's going to look at it, and in a matter of seconds, and I mean like 15, 20, 25 seconds, he's going to find a bracket. He's going to say, well, I can see right away that it's not level 1, 2, or 3, because that's the top of the scale. We're having a lot of trouble. It's got to be 4, 5, 6, and 7. It's okay. Go ahead and read it, and then you can get it exactly. Well, he knows this woman. He knows this relationship. When he reads it, he says, oh, I can see we're at level 5. That's not so great. That's near the bottom of the scale. No wonder we're having trouble. And he will have realizations. That explains why when I did this, she did this. So now he understands the relationship better. And then you say to him, you could improve that relationship from level 5 up to level 4. He says, you can? You say, yeah, it tells you in the book how to do that. He says, well, let me borrow your book. I want to do that. I say, wait a minute. Before you go, I want to show you something else. And you open to the scale of sexuality. Well, that's relevant, isn't it? It's his wife. So he looks at it and he says, you mean there's a scale of sexuality? I say, yeah. You don't have to tell me if you don't want, but for your own illumination, where are you on this scale? Guaranteed he's going to want to know that. He's going to look at it and he's going to find a bracket. He's going to say something like, well, I can see right off. It's definitely not 6 or 7. That has nothing to do with me. Okay, fine. So go ahead and read it and you can get it exactly. Right? So he studies, he goes, oh, I can see I'm at level 4. So when he has that insight, a lot of things will be cleared up for him. He might also say, and I can see that my wife is at level 6. Ah, that explains what's going on here. See? So I could keep doing this hypothetically for all 35 scales, but I think I sort of explained how this works.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you could, and I advise all the readers to do this, find your level on every scale, all 35. And when you are done, you will understand yourself at a whole new level. You will be a different person. Your mind will be greatly enhanced and clarified and relieved because you will know on these 35 areas. In other words, when people are confused or have anxiety or depression, there's always a lack of clarity. I talk to a depressed person. Boy, is he confused. He doesn't know what the hell's going on. That's why he's depressed. Or a guy who's worried about something, right? He doesn't really know what's going on. That's why he's worried about it. But this material absolutely undercuts depression and anxiety because it gives you the facts.
Absolutely, yeah. So it sounds like the more specific you get, the better. Is that right?
That's right. This is very specific. There's no one size fits all, and every person is different, every situation is different, and the material is natural law, which makes it intuitive. It's not counterintuitive. So it's like when you're using the Pythagorean theorem. Like if you came to me and said, my garden is 4 yards on one side and 3 yards on the other side, and I want to make a diagonal walk. Will you measure it for me? And I say, I don't have to measure it. It's going to be 5 yards. That's the Pythagorean theorem. That's the beauty of math. You don't have to measure, you just calculate it. So that happens with this. You look at it, you see what it is, bing, that's it. So for example, there's only one person who works on my car. This guy is brilliant. He works on racing cars, right? That's the major leagues of auto mechanics, right? So anything's wrong with my car, I call him up, I bring over the car, I go back the next day, it's fixed. Here's whatever it cost. Now, this guy is, on the scale of human ability, at least an expert, which is level 3. He might be level 2, which is virtuoso. I haven't really studied it, but he's clearly at least an expert. So that's what I want to know. So no matter what's going on with my car, he figures it out right the first time. And also, another thing is, I know he's honest. Because sometimes I'll bring it in and I'll say, it's doing this and this. He'll say, don't worry about that. That'll go away. See, he's being honest with me. So that's what I need to know about that guy. I don't need to know where he is on the scale of literacy. I'm not going to discuss literature with him. See, I don't need to know where he is on the scale of conflict. We don't really have any conflict. You see? So you use it very specifically in whatever application comes up. So if you're dealing with a human being, it's relevant. You don't always have to spot everybody on every scale, is what I'm saying. But you have to spot the person on the relevant scale.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the scale system makes it like easy to gauge to see where you need to improve, right? Because you can, if you're low on the scale, that opts for more improvement. Is that correct?
Well, wherever you are on the scale, you target yourself for the next level up. If you're at level 4 and you target yourself for 1 or 2, you will fail. But if you target yourself for level 3 and you make an effort, you will succeed. You know why? It's the next level up. So if you're on the 2nd floor and you want to go to the 3rd floor, you just go up one flight of stairs, you're there. That's the next level up. You can't get to the 4th floor without going through the 3rd floor. Can't be done. Whether you take the elevator, the escalator, the stairs, whatever. So the fact that you can never skip a level is helpful to you. Because once you find a level, you know your target, your destination is the next level up. And that's valuable because you just focus on that one thing. For example, when I worked as a trainer, there's a scale of physical fitness. So a guy comes to me and I say, okay, what's going on? He says, I think I'm sick. I've been getting upset stomachs and blah, blah. Okay, so go to the doctor, try taking some acidophilus for your stomach, whatever, So I see him the next time. He says, how are you feeling? He said, oh, I'm not sick anymore, but boy, am I tired. I'm happy. You know why? It's the next level up. He got up to the next level. Tired. That's level 5. Now, at that point, I'm not going to tell him, go out and run a marathon. I'm going to say, look, I want you to get a lot of sleep. Take it easy. Don't overexercise, right? Because he's tired. At some point, he's going to show up and say, how you feeling? He says, I got a lot more energy now. Great, he just went up to level 4, normal. He's not tired anymore. Now I say, okay, let's get busy with the weights. Let's get you to the gym, see? So this tells you where you are, and when you know where you are, you know what to do across 35 axes. And
Absolutely.
let me give you a datum from engineering that's absolutely relevant to this. It's often said that 90% of finding the right answer is asking the right question. So let's say somebody gives me an amplifier to fix, right? I don't know what's wrong with it. So I start asking questions. Well, maybe some of these tubes are no good. If it's an old amp that's got tubes. I start, all the tubes work. Okay, it's not that. So I have to ask another question. Maybe it's the power supply. Check there's a break in the power supply. Put in a new power supply, works perfectly. See, asking the right question. When I asked, is it the tubes? That was the wrong question. I couldn't fix it from there, you see? This is true for everything. So when you know what level you are at, asking the right question means, how do I get to the next level up? That is the right question.
Awesome.
So it opens the way to success. So these are 35 pathways to success. And people just keep telling me that over and over and over in very specific ways. One guy has one thing, another guy has another thing. But that's what they tell me. So this is universally applicable. If you can read English reasonably well and you want to improve yourself or others or both, this book is for you. Now, some people think everybody wants to improve oneself or others, and I'm sorry, that's not true. There's all kinds of categories of people who are not interested in improving either themselves or others. This could be psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists, professional criminals, serial murderers, corrupt politicians, war criminals, etc., etc., etc. Right? This is the type of guy. How about a terrorist? Think a terrorist wants to improve himself? No. If he did, he wouldn't be a terrorist. He would be taking care of himself and not killing innocent people. So I've actually calculated that about 50% of the human race wants to improve himself or others.
That's pretty solid. I mean, I would like to see more, of course, but it's so important to focus on the path of personal development because that's pretty much why we're here. I feel.
Absolutely. In Hinduism, they say that you come into this world with a karma, and you're here to resolve your karma. That is their basic explanation of the whole Megillah. Well, I have watched this stuff help people resolve their karmas, even if they don't know the word karma. That's what I was doing with my clients. See, when something is going on with a person who knows Hinduism will say, well, it's my karma. And as he's right, it is. So the guy comes in and he's got this thing going on that's, whatever it is, he can't keep a job, Yeah, that's my karma, I can't keep a job. Well, when I finish with him, he's keeping a job. So didn't I help him resolve his karma in that little area? So you see, this is all done very specifically. This works because it's accurate, it's precise, and it's specific. And it's probably the first system like this for the human race that is precise, accurate, and specific.
Absolutely, yeah. So we talked about a lot of cool things today. We talked about your story, how you started this, and how it really works with the scales and the 35 barometers that you talked about. And I feel like this is super relevant to a lot of people and how they can improve their lives. It's a very good system, and how, because a lot of people, they set out on the path to self improvement, but they don't have a system, so it's kind of hard to make progress. So I feel like this can be something that can help them and fill the gaps for them.
Right. Because as I said, once you spot yourself, and remember, you're spotting yourself, you know yourself, right? So if you're honest with yourself, you say, okay, I'm at this level, right? And you target yourself for the next level up, voila, that's your pathway. Now, what it takes for you to get there, that's a wild variable. It might take one guy a week, another guy a month, another guy a year. There's a lot of variation here. But you're going where you need to go.
Yeah, for
And,
sure.
and that's a big deal. If someone invited you to a rendezvous, you would certainly expect them to tell you the time, the date, the location, and maybe how to get there. Right? Needless to say, it's very hard to get someplace if you don't know where you're starting from, don't know where you're going, and don't know how to get there. Now, this sounds idiotic, but most people do this regularly. Most people do not know where they are, where they're going, or how to get there. And that is what this book is for. Of course,
Absolutely.
35 axes. So guys having trouble in school, right? Let's say most people have kids and most kids have trouble in school, right? So mom sees that little Johnny is getting bad grades. She says, Johnny, come here, let me show you this, right? She opens the book to the scale of scholarship. Well, Johnny's 13, he can read, he knows what scholarship means. He knows he's a scholar. And he's going to say, there's a scale of scholarship? She say, yeah, where are you on the scale? Guaranteed he's going to want to know that because he's having trouble. So he'll look at it and he'll find the bracket. He'll say, well, I can see right away, I'm definitely not at 1, 2, or 3. That's the top of the scale, and I'm not a good student. Okay, read it, and then you can get it exactly. He spots it. Oh, I'm at level 5. That explains a lot. That explains why this, and this. And then she says to him, well, we can move you up to level 4, and then you'll be a better student. And you see, this is foolproof because we know the level he's at and we know where he's trying to get. So she just follows the information in the book, and eventually he gets up to level 4 without hiring a tutor, sending him to remedial classes, invalidating him, making him feel stupid or anything. You just follow this procedure. Now the next card, he's getting B's and C's instead of C's and D's. See? It's very specific. And the main thing you have to realize that makes this work is it's natural law. Now, coming from a hard science background, I wouldn't have bothered to publish this book if it wasn't natural law. So people sometimes ask me my opinions. I almost never give my opinions on anything, even if they ask me. Because it's just an opinion, So, but facts, that's another thing. If somebody says, what's the value of 1g? The value of 1g is 9.8 meters per second. That's the acceleration of gravity at the surface of the Earth. That's a fact. That's not an opinion. I will tell them that. That's what a good teacher does. So I've started school when I was 3, and I've been involved in education my entire life to this very day. So I know a lot about education. And I just focus on the facts. I get the guy to get the facts. This is the fact. Well, what about blah, 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 blah? No, that's not what it is. This is the fact. Columbus did not discover America in 1493 or 1495. Okay? He discovered it in 1492. Every book in the world says that. We have records. This is not a speculation. So, it's the same thing with any subject. And another thing that I noticed that contributed to this is, most people don't know this, in any area, you name it, cooking, fishing, driving a bus, you name it, there's only a few rightnesses against an infinitude of wrongnesses. There is an infinitude of ways to drive a bus wrongly. You can do it standing on your head. You can do it blindfolded. You can do it while you're drunk. See, you can do it with no hands. These are all wrong. But if you talk to a bus driver, he'll tell you, that's the right way to do it. And this is true in any subject. That's what education is about. Okay? So you go into geometry, and they want you to prove things in geometry. They show you how to do it. You learn it. There's a certain way to do it. And all the rest of the ways are not right. And that's true for everything. This is a complete eye-opener for people who live according to opinions and beliefs.
100%. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights with us today. I think people are getting a lot of value out of this, and I really enjoyed it myself. So if people want to learn more about you and where to get the book, where can they go?
Well, I would invite them to my website, which is septemics.com.
Awesome.
Septemics, where you can see what many readers have said about it, what many journalists have written about it. You can read sections of the book itself. You can read the reviews. You can even listen to, if you want, a pre-recorded introduction to Septemics, which explains it to a new person in 15 minutes.
Sounds good.
If you do all that, you're probably going to want to buy the book.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to be too bright to figure out that this is helpful.
Sounds good, man. I really appreciate it. And thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
All right.